I was 32 years old the moment I witnessed my father hand over the ownership of my apartment to my brother. This was no ordinary apartment. It was mine, the very place I had dedicated 5 years to transforming with my own effort and money. I had saved it from foreclosure with $30,000 from my life savings. It was the home my parents had promised would eventually belong to me. Yet there it was, handed off to my twin brother Connor during his engagement celebration as if I had never had a claim to it. The crowd around us burst into applause while I stood motionless, a half-filled champagne glass trembling in my hand. In that instant, I understood that in my family's eyes, I had always been and would always remain an afterthought. My name is Avery, and what I'm about to share with you is not simply a tale about an apartment. It's a story about discovering how far someone can be pushed before they decide to fight back. Although Connor and I share the same birthday, the same DNA, and grew up under the same roof, we lived in entirely different worlds when it came to our parents' love. I still remember my 10th birthday. While Connor was gifted a shiny new bike with his name beautifully painted on it, I received a practical set of educational books from the clearance shelf. When Connor brought home B- grades, my parents celebrated with dinner at a restaurant. But when I made the honor roll, they merely acknowledged it quietly and returned their attention to whatever Connor was doing. That message was sunk deep into my foundation. Memories from my childhood lingered with one truth: Connor mattered, and I was simply present. By the time I reached 27, I had managed to create a stable life for myself, despite the unseen burden of feeling like the less favored child. I held a marketing position in the city center at which I excelled. My apartment was small and located far away, costing me countless hours in daily travel. Still, I nurtured a quiet hope that one day my parents might truly acknowledge me, see me as deserving of the same affection they showed my brother. Then, unexpectedly, my parents made what appeared to be their first sincere gesture toward me. They proposed letting me live in their apartment. Although not exactly giving it to me, they wanted me to rent it from them at 3/4 of the regular neighborhood rate. This apartment had once belonged to my dad's grandmother and had been passed down to him years ago. "Avery, we have been thinking," my mother said during one of our rare family meals, her voice carrying that familiar tone she adopted when she considered herself magnanimous. "You could live in Grandma's old apartment. We will only charge you 3/4 of what you would pay anywhere else nearby." A small spark of hope stirred inside my chest. Could this finally be the acknowledgement of my presence and my needs? Yet, I should have realized better when it came to my family. Nothing was ever offered without conditions. The apartment's location was ideal, just a short walk from my workplace. However, the moment I entered, a sinking feeling overwhelmed me. The floor felt soft underfoot, covered with an ancient carpet that released clouds of dust with every step. The walls were painted in a diseased shade of yellow. Everything looked diseased. The bathroom was falling apart, tiles missing like rotten teeth, and the kitchen seemed frozen in the 1970s with appliances that emitted worrying sounds whenever switched on. Standing in that damp living room, I felt the heavy weight of disappointment settle inside me. This was not a present. It felt more like an afterthought, a place they did not care to upkeep. Now it was being passed off as generosity, but I accepted it anyway. The location was ideal, and deep within me lived a desperate child still yearning for approval. What unfolded was 5 years of transformation, not just of the apartment, but of myself. Each paycheck, I put aside money to make improvements. I covered the jaundiced walls with warm tones that breathed life into the space. I ripped up the filthy carpet with my own hands, saving for half a year to install stunning laminate flooring throughout the rooms. The plumbing was a ticking time bomb. Half of the pipes leaked, spreading water damage stealthily under the walls like an infection. I hired a specialist who looked at me in disbelief. "You're fortunate you discovered this when you did," he said. Another year would have brought catastrophic structural damage. One after another, the appliances failed. The dishwasher flooded my newly installed floors. The refrigerator stopped working during a heat wave, forcing me to discard all the food inside. The ancient stove heated unevenly and occasionally emitted alarming sparks. I replaced every single one of them, determined to bring life and safety back to my home. Watching my credit card bills increase with every essential purchase was stressful. I even replaced all the electrical sockets after an electrician warned me that the old ones posed a serious fire danger. Each upgrade, every fix, everything came directly out of my own funds. My parents would drop by now and then for what my dad liked to describe as examining their investment. They would stroll through the rooms, nodding in approval at the improvements I had made. "You are really making this place look great," my mom would comment, gently touching the newly painted walls. "It will be worth much more when you finish." I never minded the effort. In fact, I enjoyed it. For the very first time, I had something that truly felt like my own. Although I was paying rent and technically the property belonged to my parents, I was creating a home, crafting something beautiful with my own efforts. Then, about 1 year ago, everything shifted. I was 31, settled into my daily life, feeling fairly content with where I was. I had my career, my flat, and my freedom. That's when my parents appeared at my door with serious looks that caused my stomach to tighten even before they said a word. "Connor, we need to talk," my dad began, as they sat down on the sofa I had bought myself. His expression carried the burden of bad news. "What is it?" I asked, although a part of me was already bracing for something difficult. "We have a problem with the mortgage on this place," my mother said with a voice full of deep concern and what sounded like true anxiety. "We owe the bank $30,000, and we are unable to repay it. The bank is threatening to take the property." I felt my coffee cup slightly slip from my grasp. "So, what exactly do you want me to do?" "We need you to cover the $30,000, my father explained, his words striking me like a harsh blow. "We realize it is a large sum, but view it as an investment. This apartment will belong to you eventually." "Will be mine," I repeated quietly, barely able to speak. "Certainly," my mother replied, reaching out to gently hold my hand with a tenderness I wasn't used to. "You are our daughter. We will not leave you empty-handed. Connor will inherit the house after we are gone, and this apartment will be yours. You have already put so much effort into it." I had saved some money over the years by living simply and working steadily. $30,000 represented almost all my savings, but if it meant owning this place one day, it seemed like a wise choice. "You promised this apartment would be mine?" I asked, needing reassurance. "Definitely," my father said, looking me square in the eyes with a rare honesty aimed just at me. "We will never forget everything you have done here. You truly made it your home, so I did it." I transferred $30,000, almost everything I owned, to my parents to clear their mortgage debt. I placed my full trust in them. After all, they were my parents. Why would I doubt them? Would they deceive me about something this crucial? Life went on as usual after that. I continued living in the apartment, kept paying the rent, and worked on maintaining and enhancing the space. My parents never brought up the money again, so I assumed it was all settled. The apartment would belong to me eventually, and since I had already invested so much effort into it, it felt like mine anyway. Around 2 weeks ago, Connor called me at work. I was wrapping up some documents when my phone rang, and I could immediately sense his excitement through the line. "Hey, Avery, I have fantastic news," he said, almost bouncing with enthusiasm. "Claire and I are getting engaged. We're planning the engagement party in 2 weeks at her parents' home. You're obviously invited." Claire had been Connor's girlfriend for about 2 years. I knew her well since we all had attended the same high school. She was intelligent, funny, grounded, and genuinely kind. "Connor, that's incredible," I said sincerely. Despite everything with my parents, I truly cared about my brother. Claire is wonderful. You both suit each other perfectly. Thanks, sis. It really means a lot to hear you say that. Mom and Dad are absolutely thrilled about it. Naturally, they were. Their prize son was marrying a lovely girl from a respectable family. This was probably the best news they'd received all year. The engagement party would take place at Claire's parents' house in a nice suburb about 30 minutes from downtown. When I arrived, the place was already lively with around 40 guests, including Claire's family, some old high school friends, and relatives I recognized from various family events over the years. Avery Claire hurried over to me immediately after I stepped inside, glowing with excitement. "I am so happy you could come," she said with a bright smile. "Congratulations," I replied warmly, pulling her into a big embrace. "I am truly thrilled for you and Connor." The gathering was going smoothly. People were laughing, eating, drinking, and sharing memories about the joyful couple. I found myself genuinely enjoying the evening, reconnecting with familiar faces and soaking in the festive atmosphere. About an hour after the celebration began, my father cleared his throat loudly to capture everyone's focus. "Excuse me, everyone," he announced, his voice reaching across the room. "If I might have your attention for a brief moment." The chatter settled quickly as all eyes locked onto him. He stood proudly in the center of the living room, my mother by his side, both shining with pride. "Diane and I want to take this chance to express how proud we are of our son Connor," my father declared. "He has always been an exceptional young man, and seeing him so happy with Claire fills our hearts with immense joy." People nodded and smiled in agreement, whispering their approval. I thought to myself this was heartfelt and lovely, though a bit sentimental. "We have a very special engagement present for Connor," my father continued, reaching into his jacket pocket. "Something that represents just how deeply we love him and we feel incredibly proud of the man he has grown into." He reached into his pocket and handed an envelope to Connor. My brother's expression brightened, yet there was no surprise in his eyes. It seemed as if he had been anticipating this moment. "Go ahead, son. Open it." Connor carefully opened the envelope and extracted some official documents. He skimmed through them quickly, then looked up at our parents, a beaming smile spreading across his face. "Mom, Dad, this is amazing," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Thank you so much. I cannot believe you are doing this. What exactly is it?" Someone from the crowd called out, prompting my mother to step forward, radiating pride. "It is the deed to an apartment downtown, the one Claire has been living in for the last few years. We are giving it to Connor and Claire as a wedding present." The room exploded with cheers and applause. People clapped and shouted their congratulations, praising Connor on how fortunate he was to have such generous parents. I felt like a blow had landed in my stomach, my vision narrowing and the edges darkening as I fought to catch my breath. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. That apartment. My apartment. The one I had been paying rent on for 5 years. The one I had entirely renovated with my own funds. The one I had spent $30,000 to save from foreclosure just a year before. The one my parents had promised would belong to me one day. Instead, they were handing it over to Connor. "This is such a precious gift," Claire said, looking at the papers in Connor's hands. We clasped hands, overwhelmed with gratitude. We had been discussing the idea of finding a place of our own, and this moment felt absolutely ideal. "Connor truly deserves it," my father declared loudly, ensuring his words reached everyone. "He is about to get married and begin a family soon, hopefully. He and Claire need their own home to start their shared life." I glanced at my parents, silently pleading for a glance, some sort of explanation or perhaps an apology. Yet when their eyes met mine, they merely smiled and shrugged, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. That was the moment my Aunt Barbara, my mother's sister, spoke from across the room. "Wait a moment," she said sharply, piercing through the cheer. "What about Avery? Hasn't she lived in that apartment all these years?" The atmosphere suddenly turned solemn. Everyone turned toward me and then back to my parents. My cheeks felt on fire with embarrassment, but the lump in my throat made it impossible to speak. My father responded with a casual shrug. "Avery will need to move out. Of course, we have allowed her to stay there for 5 years already, which I believe has been quite generous. She is an adult now," my mother added. "She can find her own place. There are plenty of apartments available in the city." I could have revealed the truth right then and there. I might have stood up and declared that I was not living there free of charge as my parents suggested. I could have explained that I paid rent every single month, that I had personally renovated the entire apartment with my own funds. They had given them $30,000 just last year to save that apartment from foreclosure. But I did not act. Years of being conditioned to stay silent and avoid conflict left me frozen in place. I just remained seated for another 30 minutes, watching my brother and his fiancée receive congratulations for their generous gift. I saw my parents soaking in the praise for their kindness. At last, I could not bear it any longer. Quietly, I stood up, grabbed my purse, and left Claire's parents' house without anyone even noticing my departure. The drive back to the apartment, no, not my apartment anymore, was a haze of blurred streetlights distorted by tears I refused to recognize. When I arrived home, I poured myself a large glass of wine and sank onto my couch. The couch I had purchased with my own money, surrounded by walls I had painted myself. Every item in this place represented years of effort, expense, and dedication. Yet now Connor was about to receive everything handed to him on a silver platter. It was then my phone buzzed with a text from Connor. "Move out immediately. You have 2 days." 2 days? Not a week? Not even a conversation. Just a cold message ordering me to leave the home I had built. I stared at those words for a long moment, feeling something deep inside me begin to change. The hurt and shock remained, but beneath them surged a new and unfamiliar emotion: rage. Blazing and clear. They believed they could discard me like trash. They believed they could take away $30,000 from me, embarrass me in front of everyone, and then give me just 2 days to leave. But here's the thing about pushing someone too far. Eventually, they fight back. I called my friend Olivia, who had been close to me since college, and was one of the few who understood how tough my family could be. "Olivia, I need a favor," I said, trying not to let my voice shake. "Can I stay with you for a while? I have to find a new place to live." She answered without hesitation, "Of course. But what happened? Are you okay?" I promised to explain later and said I just needed a place for a few days while I figured things out. Then she added, "Actually, you know what? My brother Ryan moved to Europe for work last month. His house is empty. You can stay there as long as you need. No rent, just cover the utilities." Relief almost brought me to tears. After I hung up, I sat thinking about my next move. Then an idea began to take shape in my mind. If my parents wanted to play their games, I could play mine as well. Early the next morning, I called the service company and asked them to come over first thing. "I need you to disconnect and take away every appliance," I told them. "The dishwasher, the refrigerator, the stove, everything. Also remove all the electrical outlets and plumbing fixtures." The man sounded puzzled. "Ma'am, that will leave the place almost empty." I replied firmly, a new determination in my tone. "Exactly what I want. I bought all those with my own money. I paid for everything myself, so I decided to take all of it with me." The very next day, the team arrived early and immediately got down to work. They detached the dishwasher, unplugged the refrigerator, and removed the stove. Every electrical outlet I had installed was taken out, along with the new bathroom fixtures. They even took the stylish light fixtures I had bought to replace the old ones. But the biggest challenge was the laminate flooring, which took the most time since they had to lift it up piece by piece. Luckily, I had kept the original receipt, so I knew exactly how much I had paid for each plank. Watching them dismantle everything felt oddly satisfying. With every item removed, a sense of power returned to me. This was more than simple revenge. It was reclaiming what belonged to me. That evening, I called a moving company, and they arrived to load all my furniture, appliances, flooring materials, everything. Avery met me at Ryan's house with the keys, and together we spent the night moving all my belongings inside. When we finished, I placed the apartment keys in an envelope along with a brief note saying, "I have moved out as requested. The apartment is yours now." I sent it by courier to my parents' home. The next morning, my phone began ringing at 7 o'clock. First it was my mother, then my father, and finally Connor, calling repeatedly. I let the calls go to voicemail. Soon, text messages started pouring in. "You had no right to do this. We are calling the police. You cannot simply ruin our belongings. You will face consequences for this." Finally, around midday, I answered when my mother called. "Avery, what on earth have you done?" she shouted as soon as I picked up. "I left the place as you requested," I replied calmly. "You demolished the entire apartment. You took everything, the sockets, the plumbing, the floors. It is completely stripped." I said, "I only took what was mine. I purchased all those items myself. I even have the receipts as proof. You are acting out of spite. This is incredibly petty. We could have you reported to the authorities." I responded, "Go ahead. Contact the police. Tell them I took my own belongings when I moved out. I am sure they will be very interested to learn how you deceived me out of $30,000 and then forced me to leave with just 2 days' notice." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Avery, you should not have done this," my mother finally said, her voice much softer now. "Look, we can find a solution. Perhaps we can consider that $30,000 as a wedding present for Connor." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. A wedding present. They were trying to justify stealing my money after the fact by claiming it was a gift for my brother. "You are all dishonest," I said. "You deceived me. You exploited me. And you discarded me when it suited you. So, I am dealing with you exactly as you have earned. Avery, please." "Oh, and Mom, you have no idea what is yet to come. I have another surprise waiting for you." Then I ended the call. The following morning, I contacted a towing service. I had one final option left. I told them, "I need you to retrieve a car from this address," giving the location of my parents' house. The vehicle was a blue Honda Civic with the license plate KM2000. I am the rightful owner, and I possess all the necessary documents to confirm this. The car was something I had nearly forgotten amidst all this chaos. 3 years ago, when my parents encountered financial difficulties, they had asked to borrow it just temporarily while sorting out their transportation needs. That was 3 years ago. I had purchased a new car for myself and allowed them to continue using the Honda. I remained responsible for the insurance, retained legal ownership, but had essentially handed it over to them. Another one of my many acts of kindness they had clearly overlooked. An hour later, the tow truck driver called. "Ma'am, I have your car," he said. An elderly couple came out yelling about the car, but I presented the paperwork, and they were powerless to oppose it. "Perfect," I instructed. "Bring it to this address." Within 15 minutes of the vehicle arriving, my phone was flooded with calls once again. I ignored them, but the text messages were something else entirely. They accused me of theft, claiming they needed the car for work and could not afford another. They called me terrible. My brother sent me the best message. "You are a complete nobody. Don't bother coming to my wedding." That actually made me laugh aloud, as if I would ever want to celebrate with any of them again. Afterward, I blocked all their numbers. I had enough of hearing their complaints. 3 weeks later, I decided to put the Honda up for sale. It was in excellent shape and sold in less than a week for $12,000. When I cashed that check, I smiled for the first time in several months. $12,000 was not nearly the $30,000 they had taken from me, but it was something. It was a beginning. About 2 weeks after that, I received a call from Claire. I was surprised to hear from her, but I picked up saying, "Hey Claire, what's going on, Avery?" She said she really needed to talk and asked if we could meet. We met at a coffee shop in the city center. Claire looked exhausted and stressed, nothing like the radiant bride-to-be I had seen at the engagement party. She immediately told me, "Your parents told me everything about what happened with the apartment. They are blaming all of it on you, accusing you of being spiteful and trying to destroy their family." I asked, "And what did Connor say?" Claire's expression darkened as she replied, "He agreed with them entirely. He called you greedy and spiteful. He said you were just trying to create problems because you were jealous of our relationship." I asked her what she thought about all of it. Claire said, "Avery, I knew you lived in your parents' apartment, and I had visited many times over the years, but I had no idea you had paid $30,000 to save it from foreclosure. I had no clue that you renovated the entire place with your own money and that you had been paying rent all this time." I replied, "Well, now you do." Then she said something unexpected. "I can't marry him. I cannot marry into a family capable of such behavior. And Connor, the way he spoke about you, his own sister, made me feel disgusted. Claire, you must decide this for yourself. Do not allow my circumstances to dictate what path you choose in life." "This concerns more than just your situation," she responded. "It is about how everyone involved handled it. Your parents deceived you, took from you, and then acted as if you were the one at fault. Connor simply went along with everything. He did not even try to fix the damage." About 1 month later, my Aunt Barbara called to inform me that Claire had ended the engagement. The wedding would no longer take place. "Your parents and Connor are furious," she explained. "They are blaming you, accusing you of turning her against them." "That figures," I replied. "They would never accept responsibility for their own deeds." Half a year has gone by since then. I am still living in Ryan's house, keeping it tidy and covering the bills. I have been saving money wildly. Without rent expenses, I already have enough tucked away for a deposit on a place of my own. My parents and Connor have attempted to reach me through other family members several times, but I have firmly communicated that I have no desire to reconcile. Their decision to lie and steal from me defined their choice. I too have made mine. Do I yearn for having a family sometimes? Yes, but I do not miss the constant sense of being less important. I do not miss being taken advantage of or manipulated. I do not miss feeling as though I do not matter. I see Connor's broken engagement as an unexpected advantage. It was not something I intended to happen, yet I do not regret it. Claire deserved more than marrying into a family full of deceit and dishonesty. Meanwhile, Connor needed to lose something precious to him, just as I have. Am I upset? Not really. No longer. I feel disappointment. Sure. It stings how easily they discarded me. Yet, above all, I am relieved to be free from their control. They can keep their falsehoods, their favoritism, and their manipulations. I have my own path to create now, and I am determined to make it meaningful. Thank you for listening. If this story resonated with you, please share it with those who might need to hear that standing up for yourself is not an act of selfishness, but a matter of survival. Remember to leave a comment and subscribe for more stories about discovering your own power when those you expect love from cause the deepest wounds. Family should support and elevate you, not break you down.